Welcome back to the deep dive. We are jumping straight in today because, well, if you're watching the organic skincare market, you know it's booming.
Oh, absolutely.
But the private label landscape, if
Agree.
it feels less like an opportunity and more like a regulatory minefield, it's just so dense.
It is. And scaling a brand, a quality brand, means navigating everything from supply chain ethics right through to international labeling laws.
Exactly. So we've got this really comprehensive guide in front of us for buyers, and our mission today is simple. We want to distill the 7 critical factors that really determine if a manufacturer is a true scaling partner.
Or just a source of future headaches.
Right, we're cutting through the marketing hype to get to the infrastructure.
Yeah.
The stuff that actually supports real quality.
And that's the key, Today's consumer, they don't just want a nice product. They demand verifiable proof, traceable ethics, complete transparency. The bar is just incredibly high now.
So let's show you why success in this space really hinges on understanding these 7 dynamics. We're talking certification, formulation, QA, the works.
And how to structure a partnership for actual growth.
Okay, let's unpack this. If we're launching a private label line, why is certification the very, very first hurdle we have to clear?
Because certification is, it's the non-negotiable gateway. It gets you onto the retailer's shelf. And more importantly, it builds consumer trust. Buyers have to prioritize suppliers who can support globally recognized market-specific certifications.
Okay, market-specific. That sounds like a place people could easily trip up.
It's the main place. People get confused because there are different levels.
Right, like I think people hear organic ingredient and they automatically think certified organic product. But that's not the same thing, is it?
Not at all. That's the exact confusion we need to clarify. You have standards like NOP or USDA, which are mostly for organic farming, for raw ingredients, think food products.
Okay.
But for a cosmetic, like a lotion or a serum, you need cosmetic-specific standards. That's where Cosmos Organic or EcoCert come in. They prove the entire process, the formulation, the manufacturing meets very strict criteria for cosmetics.
So if you get that mapping wrong,
You have an immediate compliance problem.
Yeah.
Using an NOP manufacturer for a cosmetic product, for instance, just won't fly in many markets.
that makes perfect sense. Okay, so we've mapped the right certification. What about regulatory compliance? Where do the biggest red flags pop up when you're selling internationally, say, US versus the EU?
The labeling. It's a huge risk area. The US FDA has its requirements, sure, but if you want to sell in the European Union, the demands are, well, they're far more stringent.
How so?
You absolutely must use INCI names. That's the international nomenclature of cosmetic ingredients. It's like the universal scientific language for ingredients.
So why is the INCI name so critical? I mean, can't you just use the common name?
Because it removes all ambiguity. If your label uses a friendly, common name that doesn't exactly match the required INCI name, your whole shipment could be seized at the border in the EU. And on top of that, the EU demands transparent allergen declarations, listing even tiny, trace amounts of common fragrance allergens. It's not a nice to have. It avoids crippling fines and forced market withdrawal.
So it's not just what's in the bottle, but how the bottle is technically described. Everywhere.
Precisely.
That brings us to operational standards. Even if the U.S. doesn't require pre-market approval for cosmetics, what should a buyer still absolutely expect from their manufacturer?
They must, without question, demonstrate GMP-compliant processes, good manufacturing practices. This is the bedrock of market confidence. It means they have documented systems for everything.
Everything like.
Facility cleanliness, how they qualify their raw material suppliers, batch consistency. If they can't show you evidence of strong, audited GMP protocols, they just can't credibly support you as you scale.
This is where we move from the paperwork to the actual product. This is where it gets really interesting for a lot of brands.
Yeah.
How much creative freedom do you actually have with the formula?
Ah, yes. The dance between innovation and constraint.
Exactly. We all want to be different, but how tied are hands by all these rules we just talked about?
Well, manufacturers usually offer 2 paths. First, you can use their proven, certified stock formulas. The huge advantage here is speed. Amazing go-to-market speed. Great for a pilot line or if you're on a tight budget.
But if I use a stock formula, I'm not really differentiated, am I? Anyone else can just buy that same formula.
And that's the trade-off. It absolutely limits your unique selling proposition, which is why the second path is the custom blend.
Right.
This lets you integrate unique active ingredients, create a proprietary texture, really differentiate. But, and it's a big but, custom formulas come with much higher MOQs.
Minimum order quantities.
Right. to offset the manufacturer's cost in R&D, all the new stability testing, and the time for recertification.
Let's talk about the constraints that usually trip people up. I'm guessing the fragrance system is the biggest challenge, especially for a natural or organic product.
It is the biggest regulatory tripwire, especially with clean label commitments. Your fragrance choices are so heavily constrained by bodies like IFRA, the International Fragrance Association.
They set the safety standards.
They do. And then you have those strict EU fragrance allergen lists we mentioned. So you might find a beautiful natural essential oil, but you have to be sure its components don't violate those rules at the concentration you're using.
Can you give us an example? A common natural scent that might be restricted?
Sure. A perfect one is natural citrus oils. They smell wonderful, but they have compounds that can cause photosensitivity. So if your product is a day cream, the formulator has to either remove that component or find a very specific compliant version of the oil that meets the standards and keeps the certification.
So you need a formulator who can offer compliant alternatives without just ruining the product.
Without compromising performance. It's a critical skill.
And what happens when we want to evolve the line? Say I change a fragrance or add a cool new active. What's the cost of that flexibility?
The cost is time and money. Any meaningful change to a certified formula, a new active, a different concentration, a new scent, it triggers a whole reevaluation of your labels, your allergen disclosures, and potentially a full, costly recertification.
So certification isn't a one-time thing.
Not at all. It's an ongoing process. You have to budget for it.
That really underscores the need for a deep partnership.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk reliability. We have the formula, the certifications are in place. What's the operational proof that those standards can be maintained day in, day out? What are the non-negotiables in QA?
Quality control is all about documentation and rigorous testing. 3 core things. First, stability testing to make sure the product doesn't separate or change color or, get weird over its shelf life.
Makes sense.
Second is comprehensive microbiology screening. That's your safety test, making sure no mold, bacteria, or pathogens can grow in the product over time.
And the third element, I'm guessing that's the paperwork proving you just did all that testing.
You got it. It's the consistent provision of COAs, certificates of analysis, for every single batch. If your manufacturer can't give you a batch-specific COA with the test results, you have zero proof that batch meets spec.
So no COA, no business.
No COA, no business. It's that simple.
This brings us back to packaging. You said the product can live or die based on its container. What QA protocols look at how the formula interacts with the actual bottle or jar?
It's mandatory to include packaging interaction testing. We've all seen it, right? The product where an essential oil just dissolves the pump mechanism or a cream turns brown because the jar material was wrong.
Yeah.
That testing makes sure your, say, highly acidic serum doesn't degrade the PET plastic or a strong oil won't leach chemicals from the cap. It's not optional. It's cost avoidance. It preserves the product.
And as a private label line scales, maybe you go from 2 products to 10.
Yeah.
The risk just shoots way up.
Yeah.
How does QA manage that complexity?
Through traceability and preparation. Robust QA means full batch traceability. You need to know exactly which raw ingredient went into which product batch on what day.
And then what?
You pair that with structured incident reporting and clear, practiced recall procedures. If a safety issue ever comes up, you need the infrastructure to isolate the affected product immediately and manage that risk, especially if you're selling in multiple countries.
Okay, shifting gears to a massive topic now. Sustainability.
Yeah.
Every single brand claims to be sustainable. It's just the cost of entry. So how does a buyer cut through all that noise and spot genuine commitment instead of, greenwashing?
The focus has to shift completely from these vague claims to verifiable end-to-end transparency. One of our sources put it perfectly. The foundation of a successful private label program is transparency along the supply chain and a clear path from ingredient to finished product.
That's a powerful quote. But practically, how does a smaller brand enforce that? When they're negotiating with a big manufacturer, what are the actual red flags to look for?
The biggest red flag is any claim, eco-certified, ethically sourced, whatever, without immediate third-party verification. If they can't show you the certificate or the audit report from an independent body, it's just marketing fluff.
So you have to demand the documents.
You have to. A genuine partner provides hard documentation. Detailed supplier lists, data on origin, ingredient sourcing maps. If a manufacturer is vague about where their stuff comes from, you just can't credibly use their claims in your marketing.
And packaging is just as bad for greenwashing. We see terms like compostable or recycled content on everything.
Absolutely. When you're looking at packaging, you have to go past the branding and verify those claims with hard supplier data and what we call life cycle assessments.
Okay, hang on. What exactly is a life cycle assessment in this context?
An LCA, a life cycle assessment, it studies the total environmental impact of a product from cradle to grave, from getting the raw materials to making it to shipping it to how it's thrown away.
So for packaging.
For packaging, if they claim it's 100% recycled, they should be able to show you the LCA that proves making that recycled plastic uses less energy and water than new plastic. If the data is missing, the claim is basically baseless.
So the due diligence really starts at the very beginning, even before you sign a contract.
Precisely. Your RFP, your request for proposal, should be your enforcement tool. You have to explicitly ask for their sustainability policies, traceability documents, ethics audits. If they hesitate, they're not a transparent partner.
All right, let's talk brass tacks, money and logistics. How do MOQs and pricing align with a brand's growth? You can't launch a small pilot with the same huge order you'll need 2 years from now.
And you shouldn't have to. Transparent cost structures are vital to scale without these huge sudden cash flow shocks. The goal is to negotiate tiered MOQs.
Meeting.
For your launch, you'll accept a lower MOQ, but you'll probably pay a premium on the unit price. That's because the manufacturer's setup costs are spread over fewer units.
Right. So you're sacrificing a little bit of margin in the short term for a much lower upfront cash commitment.
Exactly. Then, once you're ready for a full-scale run, you commit to those much higher volumes. And that's when you get the dramatically lower unit costs. It's a phased approach that protects your cash while you prove the market.
Now, pricing is never just the ingredients. What are the other hidden costs buyers need to make sure are clearly itemized in a quote?
You have to look for the necessary overhead that protects your compliance. Make sure the quotes clearly break out the costs for certification fees, which can be annual, the QA testing costs, including those vital COAs, fees for label proofs, and any regional translations.
Because those can sink a budget if they pop up as a surprise.
They absolutely can.
And finally, structuring the partnership itself. We keep calling it a partnership, not a transaction. What does that look like on paper?
A committed partnership builds in accountability. It should include clear SLA service level agreements for QA responsiveness.
So if there's a problem, you know how quickly they have to respond.
Exactly. You need a guaranteed turnaround time for them to investigate and report back. You should also embed regulatory review milestones right into the production timeline.
And for those brands really focused on green credentials, can you build sustainability into the contract?
You absolutely should. The most forward-thinking brands are incorporating supplier sustainability KPIs, key performance indicators, into their performance reviews.
Like what?
It could be a commitment from the manufacturer to reduce their water usage or waste per unit by a certain % within a year. You're actually incentivizing your partners to improve, turning an ethical promise into a contractual driver.
This has been an incredibly detailed deep dive. Just to recap for you, the listener, 3 themes really emerged. First, compliance is king. You have to map your certifications, Cosmos, EcoCert correctly, and understand that international labeling minefield.
Especially INCI names.
Second, customization is great, but it has to respect the certification. Any little formula change, especially with something complex like fragrances, can trigger a very expensive recertification cycle.
And third, transparency is the only real way to avoid greenwashing. Demand the proof. From COAs on every batch to life cycle assessments for your packaging.
And build that into the partnership with tiered pricing and clear SLAs.
You know, if we connect this to the bigger picture, given the depth of due diligence we've talked about, from a batch COA all the way to a supplier ethics audit, the sheer complexity of launching an organic skincare line, it's not just a barrier, it's actually a long-term quality filter. The brands that succeed are the ones that treat every single one of these regulatory and QA steps as a mandatory investment in consumer trust. It's way beyond just checking a box for compliance.
So this really raises an important question for any buyer out there. When you're selecting that next private label partner, are you negotiating purely on the immediate unit price? Or are you prioritizing the robust, verifiable infrastructure that supports long-term, scalable, and auditable trust? Think about that framework as you put together your next RFP.